Hello everybody, welcome back to part 2 of my cheapest TL Type S rebuild. Today we're going to be removing the front cylinder head. In my last video I did mention that cylinder number 5 and 6 both were at 90 psi. So there's either a head gasket issue or something wrong, warped, whatever it is. I got to take it apart to figure that out. And yeah, I won't be recording while I work. I'm going to just show you what I'm going to be taking apart, and step by step, and then stop and record. It'll be a hassle if I record while working. It's gonna take me a while, so I'm just gonna run down what I take off and then show you as I go. And we're gonna begin by removing what's left of the air intake, and also start disconnecting some of the connectors, and we're gonna remove the intake manifold. So bear with me here. Let me take those off first. Alright, so in order for me to remove the intake manifold, I typically just unbolt the throttle body and let it hang to the side, as well as you have to remove the purge valve, disconnect the brake booster hose and that hose right there next to it, and also you have to, well, I already removed the top plate, but you also have to disconnect this hose, and after that you just remove all the 12mm bolts right here and just slide it right out. Oh, as well as this hose. Yeah. Alright, so now that we got the intake manifold off, I see that somebody's been in here because they replaced the intake manifold gasket as well as the valve cover gaskets. They're blue in color. That means it's some kind of aftermarket brand. I don't know how good they are, but I'm going to be replacing them anyways. I also noticed that the power steering pump is aftermarket. I don't know how long that's going to last. So anyways, we got to remove that. It's two 12mm bolts, one right there and then one kind of right here, as well as I'll disconnect the suction hose, and hopefully I don't make too much of a mess, but I always tend to do that with the power steering fluid. And then I'm going to start disassembling the rest of the timing components and whatnot. I'll show you as I go. Also got to remove the engine mount, 17mm bolt right here. I think it's two 14mm right here, and also the ground. Hang on, let me get a bit of lighting. There's a ground right there, 10mm. Got to take all that off. So let me get started on that. Alright, so we got the pump out of the way, and also got the engine mount bracket out of the way. Then I had to replace that engine mount, obviously. That's normal though, due to age, and I actually don't know how many miles are on this car, but it's seen a lot of use. So next up, I'm going to be removing the timing covers. Those are all 10mm bolts, but in order to remove this timing cover, you got to remove the belt tensioner. You got to loosen. There's a 12mm bolt. I'll see if I can get a better shot of that. It's you can see it from underneath, but also the 14mm bolt on the bottom pulley. You got to loosen that one as well. And then this bracket, I actually take it off with the lower timing cover. I think it's 312s, which is one right here, one right there, and another one right here at the bottom. You can't really see it. Got my hand over it. Also went ahead and moved the coils out of the way, moved the harness over to that end, and normally, well, I think I already mentioned the alternator, but anyways, let me get started on this. Also, I forgot to mention the bolts for this mount are 217s. As I go, I'm going to try to mention the size of each and every bolt that I take off, just in case somebody might need to know. You know, I've done this a lot of times, but I like to help out whoever hasn't, and that way they can get the right tools for the job. So, yep. So now I'm going to be taking off the passenger side wheel because I actually can't reach the 12mm bolt on the bottom of the belt tensioner. So I've always gotten into this, and I've tried, but I struggle from the top. So I'm gonna do that right now. So I've never actually been underneath the vehicle. I remember they were bragging about redoing the whole front end suspension. Actually, it looks like they replaced the shocks, and they also replaced the control arms maybe with the compliance bushings. Not sure what else they might have done. CV also looks okay. It looks like the oil pump's leaking. Oh yeah, look at that. They did the ball joints too, and those are aftermarket. There's greasable fittings, so sweet. I don't have to mess with that. And right there, if you see right there, there's the 12mm bolt that I always struggle with on the belt tensioner. Let me go ahead and take that off. Alright, so I took the upper timing covers off. The rear 10mm bolts are a little bit of a pain to get to. And also the lower 14mm bolt on this bracket. Now, to remove this bolt, can't get it out because it hits the frame. Same thing for the bottom one. This one will come out. But I tend to just kind of leave them like halfway so they don't get caught on the threads. And I'll slide it out all together with the bottom timing cover. Now, I gotta remove the crankshaft pulley. I can't find my special socket, so I'm gonna try to get it with a regular 19. And if it don't work, then I'm gonna have to look for it. So, with me. And I gotta find my socket. Alright, so now we're on day 2, and I couldn't break it off last night, so I got a different impact, but it wouldn't also break it off either. What I ended up doing is I tightened it and then loosened it, and that ended up doing the trick. See, also got my buddy over here helping me out, so that helped as well. And now I gotta take off the pulley, and then we'll be removing the lower timing cover. Lower timing cover is off, and now we're gonna look over here. I don't believe this is normal. I don't think I should be able to spin the water pump. The belt doesn't have tension here and here. The tensioners still there. It started fine, so we could be looking at a valve issue too if it did jump timing. I'm about to put it to TDC in a bit, and then we'll see where we're at. Alright, so we got it set to TDC, and actually the slack went away, so wasn't nothing wrong with that. Alright, so this one right here lines up. Same thing for this one. It's kind of hard to get it on the camera, but so anyways, that one's there, and then the crankshaft is on TDC too, so it all lines up. It wasn't out of time, and I can't really tell if these have been replaced or not. They look fine, and actually when I was rotating the crank, water started squirting out on the exhaust end. So now we're gonna loosen the timing belt, and to do that I'm actually gonna loosen up the 10mm bolts for the tensioner. You see them right there. Right there. I'm gonna loosen them both up first, and then I'm gonna remove the bottom one, so that way that it'll swing down, and then I'll be able to remove the timing belt. So I'm gonna do that right now. Alright, so here's the dry bolt tensioner. It actually doesn't look like it's leaking. Over here on this end is just from oil splashing, getting on the CV axle, slinging around. Now I'm able to take off the timing belt. Let's get it off over here first. Come around here. And there we go. So we'll hang here. And I had to guess, I'd say this is probably original. Yeah, I can't really tell. So anyways, now that we got the timing belt off, I just gotta remove the injector connectors, start taking apart this side as well. EGR valve is going to come out, and then I got to loosen up that pipe, take off the valve cover, and I think I'm going to be able to start loosening up the head bolts after that. So let's start by tackling the coolant pipe on that end. Alright, so removing EGR valve. It's only two 12mm nuts. Break them loose. it should be over here. Hard to do this with two hands, that's why I didn't want to record this. There, got them loose. Move that out of the way, and then we got 12mm nuts and bolts for that coolant pipe. I just got to remove some of this stuff in the way so that way I can gain access to it. Alright, so I got the throttle body out of the way, and now I got to remove this coolant pipe. There's a 12mm nut right here, and then one underneath. It's kind of hard to see. And over here there's four combination of two nuts and two bolts, I believe. One's right there, another one's right there, the nuts right there, and then the bolts right there, straight ahead. So all those got to come off, and then the pipe slides back, and then I should be able to free up the head. So yeah, and those are all 12mm. We got all the 12mm nuts off. I lost the ones in the rear. It always happens. So now I put some WD-40 on the O-ring, and we are ready to come out. Let's see here. Oh, bending that pipe there. Be careful. And I think I need to get something else out of the way. I don't remember. Just gotta slide something back. Yeah, I gotta take some, maybe I gotta move this harness out of the way so I can slide it further back. So let me get that done. Alright, so now the pipe's out of the way. To remove, or not to remove, but to lift this harness out of the way, there's two tabs. There's a tab right there that you lift and pull. There's a tab over here in this area that you lift and then pull. There's a 10mm somewhere in this area that you take off, and also the ground that goes on the thermostat housing. You take that off, 10mm. So anyways, this is out of the way. Now we're gonna come over here. We're gonna start removing the valve cover. Take this off. And now just set this over here. And the thing I like about these versus the older Acura's, I guess the B series engine off the Integra, you get to remove the cams to get the head off. This one, head bolts are right there, and just as I suspected, they're 12 point. I don't know if I have the socket. I'm gonna have to look for it. If not, then I'm gonna have to come back to this in a bit. So let me see if I can find a 12 point socket. Alright, so luckily enough, I do have the socket. It's a 14mm 12 point. And there we are. And let's go ahead and start loosening these bolts. And I'm going to need two hands for this, so let me just record after I loosen them all up and remove the head. Alright, all the head bolts are out. And technically you can reuse these. You just have to measure them for stretch. They do list a specification. But I think as cheap as these are, it's just best to replace them versus the cost. And you know, I mean, I think they're like 25 or 30 bucks when I priced them out. So yeah, that's not much. Anyways, let's go ahead and remove the head. Alright, here we are finally. Head's off. Looking at the head gasket, and you can see the coolant passages got compromised, letting cooling into the combustion chamber. Actually kind of cleaned up the piston there. So we need to check to see if that's straight and flat, so that way I hope I don't have to do a block. And coming over here, here's the bottom of the head, and I'm gonna have to check this out as well, see if it's straight and flat, or I'll just run it down to the machine shop because it has been overheated. So I'll have them check this out. Like you can see the rust built up on the valves. So yeah, I'm actually gonna have the machine shop check this out and go from there. So anyways, that's how you remove the cylinder head. For the rear, it's a bit more of a pain. Yeah, just because you have to reach back there. There's not much extra besides moving the rest of the harness out of the way and I guess this out of the way too, whatever hoses are in the area. But nothing too crazy. But other than that, yeah, here we are. This is part one of the rebuild, I guess, not part two. And yeah, hope you enjoyed watching, and keep y'all updated and see what happens next.